Hello and welcome to On the Record, a debate-style television talk show where Bahamians will find the balanced, true and open debate they've been looking for. Millions of people take to the skies around the world daily. Air travel is still the fastest and one of the more convenient modes of getting around. Statistically, it is the safest mode of transportation. Yet when an accident happens involving an airplane, the fallout is far-reaching. Let's face it, no matter how safe experts say it is, a plane crash feeds into the fears of flying that so many people have, myself included. But here recently, what happens in the aftermath has become even more perplexing for Bahamians. A young pilot crashes off the coast of western New Providence 2 weeks ago. As tragic as that seems for the family of Byron Ferguson, what happened next has deepened those wounds and captured the attention of the nation. The tragedy of his death and the almost chaotic sequence of events that followed has played out in the local and international media and has taken a life of its own on social media. Tonight, we talk to the Ferguson family about this ongoing tragedy as the nation looks on. It's all on the record. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. Our discussion with the family begins on the other side of this break.
On the Record is brought to you by Alive, the nation's newest and best LTE network.
Good to be alive. Oh yeah. Here we are as in olden days. Happy golden days of your arms. Faithful friends who believe in us, gather near to us once more.
We work all year round to help entire communities to flourish. Together, let's bring some light into our lives. Alive, believe, invest.
And welcome back. They grew up in a home with all boys, sons of a famous television anchor and a dedicated civil servant. They epitomize the ideal of a successful family. A lawyer, doctor, accountant, and pilot. Now in the prime of their lives with their own families, they maintained a strong brotherly bond, never thinking that a tragedy like this could ever befall them. Joining me in studio are the brothers of Byron Ferguson, Bijan Ferguson, who is an attorney by profession, Ashton, who is a medical doctor by profession, and Anvon Ferguson, who is an accountant by profession. These are all brothers, as I said, of Byron Ferguson, whose plane crashed in waters off of New Providence just about 2 weeks ago. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. I appreciate you coming in and sitting down and having this discussion with us this evening.
Thank you for having us.
I have known these young men from the time they were boys. Their mother, Agnes Ferguson, and I worked together for many years at ZNS. And like so many others, shortly after reports surfaced about the crash and the identity of the pilot revealed, my natural curiosity as a journalist took a much more heart-wrenching reality. In the days that have followed, like so many others, I have taken a keen interest in the sequence of events. Thursday, November 8th, pilot Byron Ferguson leaves on a 6-seater Piper Aztec en route from Miami Beach County Park, South Florida to Nassau. He reports engine trouble, and sometime after 9 p.m., the plane disappears off radar in waters off of western New Providence, about a mile short of the runway at LPIA. Family, friends, colleagues rush to the nearest point at Nirvana Beach, nervous yet hopeful that he is rescued from the wreckage. Defense Force and police lead the search and rescue effort.
It is reported that portions of the plane are spotted in the water. Cell phone video, retrieved by the family, believed to be taken by an officer on scene, confirms the sighting. The turn of events, though, gets troubling when the rescue mission is called off after midnight and no divers sent into the water.
Also bear in mind it was late into the evening. It was very dark out here last night, little to no lighting. A lot of things going on, a lot of moving parts, a lot of coordination attempting to be made. But our units got here within 10 to 15 minutes of the call.
Dawn the next day, and collies conduct aerial searches. The official rescue mission begins on the sea, but by this time, there is nothing to be found. Less than 24 hours after the crash, police confirmed that a joint search with the Defense Force and U.S. Coast Guard would be called off.
And so we'll continue to search. We'll continue to search as long as necessary. We'll go until sunset this evening, till dark fall. And then tomorrow again, we'll resume search. We want to bring some relief to the family members of the persons who were in that aircraft.
With little solace on the state of the investigations thus far, the family goes to the media, outraged at the lack of support in a rescue and now recovery.
No divers went into the water. The search was called off, I think before even midnight. Questions I have about this stuff is who has that authority to call off a search, and what's the criteria that they use?
Ashton. Okay, come on.
No divers would have been in the water, nothing, no equipment, nothing available. That's just incompetence to me. I don't know anywhere else in the world where something like that would happen. That's just insane that this day, 2018 in the Bahamas, a plane crash, you have no divers and available until the next morning at light when you have a clear indication of where the plane is. Furthermore, you come back the next morning, you don't know where the plane is. So from the time you discovered it,
they had that location marked where they found the plane.
The only thing you can say is, well, the current may have carried it.
National Security Minister Marvin Dames punches back, defending the rescue effort and going so far as to claim Ferguson had no flight plan. The following day, his claims are refuted. Investigators confirmed the flight plan. The public outrage explodes. Social media is rife with criticisms of the agencies, the minister, and government. A week later, the Head Knowles Group leads a team of volunteer divers to the crash site and recovers debris.
It was 40 minutes that the first person went, I see it, about 80 feet, and it was 600 feet from the original pin. And I mean, you could see the beach. Yeah, I could swim to the beach. That's how close it is.
Public outrage grows even more.
We could have found what we found only a week later, snorkeling at the surface. I feel as if it was some concerted effort from with divers, something more could have been done initially at the time of the accident.
The authorities would soon find themselves in damage control. How could they have seemingly mishandled this? But it was all too little, too late, even now provoking the ire of the Attorney General.
See, the difficulty is, because it's on the marine side, then an unmotivated entity, an entity that is not sensitized to that particular job, is more, it's sensitized to catching smugglers, catching human traffickers, catching poachers, defense.
The Prime Minister, in expressing his condolences, promised a full investigation into the search and rescue efforts.
Gentlemen, first of all, again, I'd like to thank you for being here. I want to start out really with the events of November 8th. Once you would have gotten word that your brother was in trouble, take us to that point.
I think it started with me. I currently live in Tampa, so I was in bed with my wife at the time, and my mom called me around 8:30, and she's just panicking. She heard Byron was having trouble and he might have to make an emergency landing, and the first thing she did, she gave me the number of his friend who was supposed to meet him, Errol. She's like, call it. And I called him, and he was saying, Byron was having trouble. So he may have had to make an emergency landing. So I immediately called my mom and I was like, Mom, I spoke with him. He just told me, he was having trouble. He would have to make an emergency landing. Like, we know Byron, we're confident in his ability. Like, calm down, because she was crying. She was all over the place. I was like, just try to be calm. Don't worry too much about it. But even with me saying that, I didn't know where to put myself. I just started shaking and I really couldn't control myself at that point.
And I guess she contacted me and she told me the same information. I'm home with my family, and I immediately jumped in my vehicle, collected my brother and her, and we drove to the location where we know he was intending to come down to Vanna Beach. We collected them, and on the drive, we're just trying to get there as quick as we can. When we arrived in the area, we saw, fire engine, ambulance, everybody just standing up on the shore.
Once you got there, you saw the emergency vehicles, you realized that the plane was down at that point.
Well, nothing was visible in the water from where I stood initially. So, I made my way closer, and then I saw Defense Force boats and the lights from their boats at the ocean. So they were assembled, in a particular formation. So I presume that's the location where they made some discovery or saw something. Just an assumption.
Ashton, in your mind, at that point, what were you thinking? What were you feeling? Were you still hopeful?
I was hopeful because we were right on the beach and this was within eyesight. So I would assume swimming distance to shore. At that point in time, there were maybe 2 or 3 vessels out there. I also, eventually a helicopter came, and I was assuming that they probably down there working, trying to get him out of that plane right now. I just thinking through my mind what injuries he may be having to deal with. How are we going to deal with it?
This is, of course, your medical training.
Yeah, so I thinking in my mind, like they down there probably struggling trying to get him out of that plane right now. So I just waiting for somehow, some way, we're wondering how they're gonna, if the boat gonna speed into shore to bring him to the ambulance or whatever, because they were there for, we were out there watching them. It was right offshore. So that's all I was thinking. I was thinking that they down there probably working to get him.
At what point did you really start to become concerned about the effort itself?
When I got some information that there were no divers in the water, and I became alarmed when the information started going around that they were calling off the search and rescue, and this was like honestly before even midnight, I think. And I mean, a formal press conference was given out there to the media on the beach by the officials in charge, indicating, saying we were not involved in the press conference and we didn't drift that way to the media to, we were letting the officials do what they had to do. And
your focus is now what's happening out there.
Yes.
Yeah, you're looking for them to bring
back. I didn't know what was made of it. And they came and they dismissed us off the beach, dismissed us and all of his loved ones, not just us. It was,
what do you mean dismissed?
They, the police officials came to us and said this was private property. They closing down this area, the search, and they can't leave us out there. We have to leave the area. In my mind, I'm thinking, what's the complaint against us? What's the complaint? Did the private owners complain? Like, anyway, at that point, so much things going on, and you don't have time for the argument, the back and forth. You don't want to develop an antagonistic relationship with persons who are supposed to be saving my loved ones. We complied. We went out. We left the beach. We were on the roadside for another period of time,
just watch them,
trying to call persons in different, who you know, to try and find out what's going on. How
you're now in a desperate situation.
Exactly, and then, I mean, what really, I mean, obviously, we started to become anxious. We thinking now they were there doing work, and then all of a sudden, all the resources are being pulled away.
At this point, did the authorities say to you, "We're calling off the search because"?
Well, like you said,
They didn't give any reason.
Well, they indicated on the media that because it was dark, it wasn't the lighting.
We saw
But they have no form of communication with you.
That's what I'm saying. And then I'm aware, I'm informed on how search and rescues are conducted. There must be a command center established so that proper command, control, coordination could take place. I'm informed, I know this. That did not happen. That never happened. And by doing so, had they formed the communication with the family, we had so much information to supply them with. So when they decided to speak to the public, they could have speak from an informed position. I know everything that goes on with my brothers. We know who was supposed to be on the flight. We know what cargo he was carrying. We know the color of the plane. We know the registration of the plane. Had they spoken to us, we could have given them this, and then it was their job to verify. But we knew that our loved one was unaccounted for. We had information that, listen, we have our loved one who was a pilot, and he's en route to New Providence, and he's unaccounted for. Had they spoken to us initially, we could have supplied them with a lot of details.
On the Fauna Beach, personally, I don't know if you can recall, him and both of us, we went to a police officer and expressed our connection to the crash. The
So you made yourselves known.
Yes, we did.
That was Friday. The defense force officer on the beach, I introduced myself to this person, and I explained my connection to the crash and wanted to be an update. I identified my mother to the individual. He explained to me his role and his limitation in discussing the matter, as he's not in charge. He identified the person who was in charge, the police officer in charge of the investigation, and he didn't reveal much information to me at that time, specifics, and the person in charge of the investigation went and told my mom they'll do all that they can do. That was the extent.
And that was it. You are still abroad.
I'm still abroad. So I initially received the phone call from my mother around 8:30. I look online, Eyewitness News, there's a press conference at 11:37 p.m. 3 hours later, there's a press conference being held that the search is being called off. At this point, I didn't know where to put myself. I was pacing around the house. I didn't sleep. I didn't do nothing. The only thing I did, grab my backpack, and I just went straight to the airport that morning.
I came out that Saturday, 2 days later. I came out to visit with the family, to talk. You and I started a conversation. Shortly after, you made a decision to go to the media to express your frustration. Why?
First of all, I would like to say everybody who I talk to, I always like to balance out what's rational and irrational. That night when the search was called off, after there were all reports that the tail of the plane was visible, it was right in shore. Even though you could look at where they're working, you're not in the Atlantic Ocean searching for the crash site. It was off the shore, you saw the plane. So I had concerns that night that I think needed to be maybe aired, that could have made a difference subsequently. I made that decision when I said Sunday. 72 hours I think is a reasonable time for someone to reach out to us. But I wanted my family to give the authorities what you could consider a reasonable amount of time. I think 3 days is a reasonable amount of time for them to reach out to us, find out what we know, what's going on,
So
give
at
us
this
some
point,
information.
no kind of liaison or official communication?
Nobody.
I think I saw on the news, I think where a couple of the authorities sort of spoke to you on the beach, we're going to do our best. So at this point, this is from Thursday to Sunday, still no official communication from anyone.
And that's when I decided to go to the media. It wasn't an irrational decision. You just jump up and you feel like someone ain't doing something the way you think it needs to be done, and you just, I say, let's wait, let's see how it does. Let's see how it plays out. And I expressed that the way how it handles, sometimes they develop an antagonistic relationship when we're supposed to be working together because of how they dress the matter. And it was just, and another thing that really disturbed me throughout it was I was getting information from persons that, buddy out there, we pass out there. I have persons who were out there who told me, oh, my brother has jet skis, they passed out there. Nobody was out there.
I did a flyover Friday morning
stuff like
by
that.
8 o'clock, and there was still no activity out there.
And so to higher authorities, it's not a it's not a condemnation on them. You reach out to the media to bring things to their attention that may not be expressed to them in honesty. So it's a cry out for help. It's not a condemnation. You don't expect any cabinet minister to be out there on a boat looking for my brother. No. But I don't know how accurate this information you get in is. We out here every day. Persons out there who know barring and stuff on jet skis, and I mean, and just even not to condemn anybody or anything, the fact that independent persons went out a week later and could find such significant wreckage in shallow water.
We'll definitely come to that. EJ, you now you're legally trained. You're a lawyer. You're watching all of this. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? I mean, that part of you, I'm sure, must be kicking in as well, because now we're moving now very quickly from a search and rescue to a recovery. And yet, in your mind, so much has not been done.
Definitely. Like I say, the anxiety, and also there are significant missteps I observed. And obviously it would affect or contribute to any potential legal recourse we may have or potentially have. To indicate to the media that, you came across the wreckage or the plane, it was intact, and then the following day you return and it's not there. That is so critical and crucial to the investigation.
What happened to a whole plane? I mean, a whole plane just doesn't disappear.
See,
or
shouldn't just disappear. From the legal side, you're considering these things because the investigators need to find out, ascertain what caused the crash. There's information, obviously, that he was having issues with the door, and so it was critical for them to recover the wreckage and barring. You know what I mean? So
I don't want to lose. I want to be balanced, and I could say that we have been more intimately educated on the terrain out there of the ocean.
Definitely.
And I can't say you cannot understand how you lose a wreckage. Tide moves things, and there's a shelf out there.
The ocean is a very strange thing.
So you can't say that you don't.
Because that was the argument of so many people. If the plane, if there was a plane the night before, where would it have gone
so
the next morning?
You understand.
So there are a lot of
it's a
questions.
Certainly. My issue is I understand where a formal review and stuff must take place before you can make any concrete decisions. I understand that, it's fair enough. Some things are blatant. Some things are blatantly obvious. Okay, you remember in February, in the Parkland shooting in Florida, where I think it was 12 to 14 children were shot in school. You had a deputy sheriff outside who didn't go inside to engage the shooter. No review needs to be done to identify that his actions were negligent and was not in keeping with his job.
Things are very obvious.
When if you have a public shooting, your job is to engage that shooter, to distract him so that civilians can get away, escape, or be rescued. That's your job. You may very likely lose your life doing that, engaging a shooter. That's your job. So I'm saying some things, you don't need a review, you don't need no formal fluff to identify certain missteps. That's all I'm saying.
Gentlemen, we have to take a break in our show. I am with the brothers of pilot Byron Ferguson, now missing for 2 weeks since his plane crashed in waters off the western end of New Providence. We'll take a break and be back right after this.
Hi, I'm here to tell you about the fastest way to purchase the vehicle you want right from home. With SBT Japan, we import used cars from Japan straight to you. Car ownership doesn't have to be hard. Go to sbtjapan.com and sign up for free. Search for the car you want. Place your order and make a payment using any one of our convenient payment options. Once you pay the duty and tax to our in-house broker, we will clear the vehicle and even deliver it straight to your home. Sounds too easy? Well, shouldn't it be?
Hey, look at you all. Look at you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, man. Oh, why can't this internet work any faster?
I hear that.
Introducing the new Rev Triple Play with free HBO Go. 200% faster internet and unlimited calling everywhere you go. Sign up for only $99 and enter to win over $50,000 in cash and prizes. Rev, you and us together.
Are you afraid to swipe your card and you don't like to carry cash? If so, you need checks. Executive Printers can make checks for all your needs. They have laser checks, personal checks, continuous checks, and more. All checks have up to 15 security features, so you know you'll be protected. You can even customize your checks. Come and see one of our experts today, or log on to epbahamas.com for more info.
This portion of On the Record is brought to you by Generali Insurance Company Limited, your employee benefits specialists.
Tragedies are a part of the very existence of mankind, but what happens afterwards can mean the difference between the start of a healing process or the prolonging of the anguish. Tonight we are talking to the Ferguson family about the tragedy of the crash of November 8th. Bijan Ashton and Ann Vaughan are my guests in this segment. You held a news conference 3 days later that really gripped the attention of the nation. People, I think, in earnest, sat up and started to pay attention. You also took your frustrations to social media. Did that make the crucial difference, you think, for you in getting the right people to now pay attention?
Absolutely. I think it did. I think it did. And some of it in the wrong way, but it did. Like I say, it's not a condemnation on anybody. It's a cry out for help to bring attention to some concerns that some persons that are citizens that you represent have. And once again, like I say, I consciously waited 3 days, 72 hours, because I think that's a reasonable time for authorities to begin to reach out and to start to get some communication, dialogue going so that we can now approach this on the same page.
Do you think the public outcry too also would have pressured some of what happened?
Absolutely. You saw numerous comments by politicians, ministers, and at the end of the day, they have to listen to the people. That's who they ultimately work for. So the outcry on social media, obviously it drew the attention that we were asking for initially from the authorities to establish a line of communication. Communication or lack thereof, they've caused wars. They've caused wars. People not speaking to one another. So it was a cry out. It was a cry out.
You're watching this on, you all are a part of a generation of, I call them social media experts. This is where young people express them. This is where people express themselves. You're now watching this, you're a part of this. Did you ever think for a moment that it would get to this point? I was shocked as well in my own sort of just followings, the amount of people, who they were, where they were coming from, the comments, and it was all one-sided. Something is wrong. Why is this happening? Why did this happen? You're watching this as well, eh?
Yeah, watching it initially, I wasn't expecting that kind of reaction. Like they said, it was honestly just a cry for help. Just trying to get the right attention, trying to let them know that we are very concerned about our loved one and we would like to assist in any way possible, but we have no line of communication. It's almost as though we don't exist. We're just out there with our private search. They say they're doing what they're doing. We're not aware of it. I'm out there on boats. I'm out there on planes doing what I can, but I don't know. I'm just feeling helpless and hopeless at this point.
I think it spread, or the impact was so significant too, because that was Byron. Byron had, you know, he worked overseas, so he had a lot of friends all over the world. And so when they caught wind that something that possibly happened to him, it just spread like wildfire.
And then you would have had the Minister of National Security who would have responded to your criticism, defending the work, but also his comments, the fact that there was no flight plan, to be refuted the next day, and then the apology to follow. But when you saw and heard that, how did you feel?
I felt embarrassed. I felt hurt first, right? I felt embarrassed for him, and I felt like for the country, it's a condemnation, because now he made that comment was in the newspaper on the 12th. I think that was 4 days after the crash. And you know, I'm not an expert on this stuff. I stand to be refuted, but I understand that when a plane enters another country's airspace, they have to declare a flight plan or something. Like you have to hand, I don't know, the air traffic control hands you over they have to, I don't know how it works, right? So my question is, 4 days after this crash has happened, this plane has already been in our airspace. You still can't confirm whether it was a flight plan.
And who was giving him this information?
How many airlines when do you get the flight plans of these planes that come into our airspace?
Did you feel this was an attack on Byron's proficiency and his capability?
I honestly, just considering where I came from in my track, I think it was an attempt to blame the victim and deflect, to throw out there's no flight plan. People or pilots who don't file flight plans are avoiding detection from doing something nefarious or, you know, that sort of thing. But a flight plan has absolutely nothing to do with search and rescue.
Which was, I think, what caught a lot of people as well.
Absolutely.
You know, you're talking apples and oranges.
Nothing to do with search. If someone committing an illegal act falls in a situation, you still must rescue him.
So let me ask you, do you think then that they thought that this was just some guy out there doing something,
like
you know, doing something and just skylarking or running some kind of business, and his plane gone down, so it is what it is?
If they're doing it, Byron, when he comes home, he assists his friends and he charters, but he always flies at night. Byron is strong with instruments, and there's less hassle at the airports. So he flies at night.
You were saying?
I was saying, you know, here's my thing. You make these comments, you say he didn't have a flight plan, la 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 la. What does that have to do with anything?
But it is significant, but that's part of your investigation. That's nothing to do with the search and rescue.
Which was contrary to what you all were speaking about initially. Days later, you had the Head Knowles volunteer group go out, and they were able to salvage the first pieces of tangible debris, believed to be from the plane. When you saw that, as we all did, because now it goes over social media instantaneously, there's a live video, it's again, the country is sort of gripped by what is happening. In that moment, you see this, you know, what was the state of the family at that point?
Honestly, I felt like they weren't doing anything. I felt all the talk, it was just grandstanding attempts. Like, you know, we came and we showed up, but no one really did nothing. That was my initial...
You felt?
Yes, that was my initial feeling when I saw such a big piece of the plane, you know? So that was my initial
feeling. And literally right off shore.
And the location of it, that was my initial feeling.
And I think now, in the age of social media, where you have a voice and you don't have to, nobody could dictate the narrative of what's going on with you. And I think we need a more responsive officials, government, than a reactive one. You see when you see the defense of the search, oh, we did this, but so much things are unfolding that contradicts this defense and this proposition that there was such a vigorous search and rescue.
My question is, if these things were happening, why weren't they made known as they were happening?
And that demonstrates the communication, because had we had something official, like I say, most times, not most, there's a standard. I would go on record. ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization, which is a specialized agency in the United Nations, which the Bahamas is a party of, signatory to. There is a standard for search and rescue or aviation incidents. There is a standard approach. A minimum must be met. And it falls short.
Do you think this country failed your brother?
Big time.
What?
I think the search and rescue efforts initially during those critical moments, it just wasn't there. It wasn't up to par.
And once again, to bring balance, we have respected, qualified, professional members of the police force, the defense force, volunteers with Basra. You see civilians, men out on the plane. We have persons here who are qualified and professional. The systems and maybe the culture is not in place allowing these persons to do what they need to do. I also want to just comment on what we've been doing. We've been collaborating a lot with the Head Knowles group and stuff, because the location, like I say, learning about the ocean up here, then the terrain, how it drops off. I understand that locally there's limited capacity to get that to explore those depths. So a private diver was flown in, and he explored that area as deep as he could over the past 2 days. But these are efforts that were done. The person was registered with Basra. The Defense Force officer was one of the volunteers on the Head Knowles boat. Defense Force divers covered for him as to safety as he went to certain depths. Things have been done.
So this wasn't just sort of an arbitrary...
Yeah, it's not just...
Right.
So I just want to put it out there. Yes, things are being done, but Defense Force...
that is good to know,
the police boat was out there.
Again...
It's all after the attention has been raised. It shouldn't be done from the start.
But just to expand on what Ashton indicated, the Defense Force is not an attack on the Marines of the Defense Force. Leadership.
We've got to go, but I'm going to take the liberty to take some time. What, if Byron was sitting here right now, what would he want to come out of this?
Byron was a huge advocate for aviation safety, and he just thought that the country could benefit so much more from aviation. He always advocated for safety, improving the standards and the way how it operates currently. He always advocated for that. So I know he would have been obviously asking for the necessary changes to be implemented.
And let's hope that we see that change that he's advocated for and that he wants. And you know, out of every tragedy, I always say you hope and pray that something good comes.
Can I add one more point?
Sure.
In our culture, we have the term nitpicking. Some people, like I say, irrationally nitpick. There are questions I can ask about. We were given information about when air traffic notified the Defense Force that this plane was in trouble. We got the approximate time when they discovered the plane, hour and a half later, whatever. You can get into how far is Harbor Patrol from there, how far is the base from here, what length of time it took you to get there. But you're not nitpicking, you're not getting into all that. All I'm saying is, you come into a down plane, the tail is exposed, nothing is done, you call off a search within 2 hours. You're not nitpicking like you don't understand the realities of sometimes what you have to work with. It's the glaring holes that are indefensible that are trying to be defended.
Gentlemen, I think that most people who have been following this and even watching this interview would agree with you. But I think that what you are asking and what you are pointing out are not so irrational and not so far off base. But gentlemen, thank you so much for really coming and sitting and talking with us. I know that this is a difficult time for you and your family, and certainly I can tell you that the prayers and the thoughts of the nation are with you. Again, thank you so very much. Up next, Byron's mother, wife, and sisters-in-law Join us here on The Record. Stay with us. We are back right after this.
Christmas wishes. What if they all just worked?
Have yourself a merry little Christmas. Let your heart believe. From now on, our troubles will be out of sight. Believe, oh yeah. Here we are as in olden days. Happy golden days of yore. Faithful friends who believe in us, gather near to us once more.
We work all year round to help entire communities to flourish. Together, let's bring some light into our lives. Alive, believe, invest.
For 2 weeks, this tragedy has played out in the press and on social media. In the midst of an angry public have been members of Byron's family who must now deal with the reality of this loss. Joining me in studio is Byron's mother, who is no stranger to any of us, Agnes Ferguson, along with his wife, Anya Ferguson. I'd hoped to have his sisters-in-law, which we'll hope to maybe get in a little later, but thank you for coming. I honestly wish it were under better circumstances. What have these 2 weeks been like for you?
For me, nightmare. Baron has messed with my sleep. I wouldn't wish this on anybody. I wouldn't wish it on anybody.
The night that you went to the, I'm sorry, I'm going to ask you, what has it been like for you?
It's been difficult. You know, like you already know, he works. Oh, he already works away. So he works in Algeria. So most times I'm okay with, you know, not seeing him because he's here for 5 weeks and then he's gone for 5 weeks. But in the time he's gone, I'm speaking to him every day. I'm FaceTiming him every day. He's calling every morning to speak to his son. He's calling every morning to make sure I have a great day. So it's a nightmare, but at the same time, it's like he's still away, you know? He's still away. I just haven't been speaking to him as often as I should. But it's difficult.
The night that you went to the crash scene,
I didn't go.
you did not. Agnes, you went.
To go.
What, when you went there, were you hopeful?
I was, but extremely frightened. You know, and when I got there and couldn't find anything out, I just stood around and just hoping whoever was out there was doing what they had to do to bring my child back home safe. You know, that's all. Like, it was just a hard time there.
At that moment when you realized the search was being called off,
I was crazy. I was crazy. Because I couldn't understand why. You know, I knew if something happened like outside this country, I knew what some things would be done to try to help. I just look at when a cat goes missing in the U.S., they'll do anything to find that. You know, and to hear this man say the search is called off, and particularly what struck my heart was the smirk on his face when he said it. You know, it's like not sensitized at all, don't care about nobody. You know, I was hurt, terribly hurt by that. And I think things just has to change. That's the only problem I had, the only problem I still have. the position they took with just calling off the search. It shouldn't happen. It shouldn't.
Your entire career was dedicated to this line of work. You sat night after night, day after day, presenting news, presenting these kinds of tragedies, talking the nation through these things. Did you ever in your wildest dreams think that one day you'd be sitting almost in the role of a victim, crying out for help in this country that you gave so much to? You are an iconic figure.
Never thought this could happen to me. And I just wish some people would take their jobs more seriously. I had days when I went to work, I'm off at a certain time, but I'm slotted for an assignment, and I had to do that. You know, so we just can't cut people off. When they need help, you gotta be there for them. That's all.
You chose not to go to the crash site. Why?
I just couldn't do it. I knew when I married Byron who I was marrying. At the same time, just for my sanity and my peace of mind, knowing that I had a 9-month-old child home with me, I couldn't go. I couldn't go. I just was at that point saying, you know, he's a great pilot. I know whatever happened, he's gonna walk away from this, you know? So I was just waiting for them to call and said, you know, Anya, just meet us at the hospital, we're on our way. It didn't happen.
When you understood that the search was being called off that night?
I didn't sleep. I didn't sleep for about 5 days straight. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I had to be reminded over and over that, you know, you have to be strong for your son. You know, I'm still a breastfeeding mother, so I needed to try and get myself back to where I was. But at the same time, mentally, I'm still not there. I'm not. You know, everyone's saying that they truly admire my strength, but on the outside, I'm strong. On the inside, I'm broken to pieces. That's my soulmate. To me, that's who he is. So.
You mentioned that you said Byron was a good pilot.
A great pilot.
A great pilot. And that's what in all of my followings and all of my readings, that's what I continue to see, and that's what I continue to read. And you held on to that.
I'm still holding on to that. You know, you have people out there who may think I'm crazy for believing that he's still out there. But that's just my faith. That's just what I believe, that's what I feel. You know, I just feel like he's still out there. Call me crazy, you know? But that's just how I feel.
A very significant point she made. She said, you know, when I married Byron, I knew who I was marrying. As a mother, when your son takes on certain professions, well, as a parent, there's an inherent risk. You must have thought about this at some point, or thought about the possibility of this at some point.
Yes, and I've tried to steer him from that, but he loved flying. If we, from a child, whenever we traveled, you'd miss Byron. You know, but the other boys are holding on to you. But when you go to look for him, you'll find him at one of those windows where you can see the aircraft on the outside, and he's looking murder. You know, that's the kind of person.
Admiring the planes,
so we knew where he was going. We knew, and so since he wanted that, we pushed him in the direction. That's where he wanted to go.
So many of his colleagues from around the world have reached out to you. I mean, I've seen some of it. We've talked about it. How does that, I mean, what does that do? Is that any solace, any support?
It is. It is. You know, like I know around 2 this morning, I had a friend, Ami Jove Cole, in South Africa. She just wanted me to forward a few stuff to her. They're doing their story over there, in Dubai. Everybody, they're pumping on all over, Ghana, where he was, the Trinidadians, Jamaicans, and Baron is just well-rounded man, Jerome. And he connected us with so many people. So many people. Friends in Italy, it's heartwarming to hear from them, and it's heartwarming to know my son was a good boy to them, And in spite of all that, I just want him, I wish I could have him back. I wish. I was saying, keeping the finger crossed Thanksgiving. We was talking about it last night, me and Aunt Vaughn. He said, Mommy, stop it. Stop it, but I can't just give up hope just like that.
Is a different reality about the setting for you, you think? You mentioned, it's as if he's away and you aren't talking, but that time, there's a time, there's a new reality coming. Do you feel that setting in?
No.
No?
No.
Do you think that and I asked this to the guys, if Byron was sitting here now and he was sort of looking at all of this, what would he be saying right now as a part of this discussion? What would he want?
I think Byron's main focus, like we say, he was this lovable person who loved flying, who wanted to be safe.
Who wanted change.
He wanted it to be safe. And I realized, like, when there were other crashes, when we had conversations, he'd say, see the same, foolishness over and over. And he used to try to agitate for change. He wanted something different. He wanted, maybe because he was in that, he knew this thing could happen, but he wanted to be sure you'd be protected if somebody would come to your rescue and help out. So he wanted that industry to be better than it is.
I know you experienced that as well with him.
Yeah, all the time. Flying was, when I first asked Byron why he wanted to become a pilot, why he became a pilot, his response to me was to get closer to the moon.
Really?
And you could ask him up to 2 weeks ago, Byron, why did you become a pilot? Because I wanted to get closer to the moon. This is Byron's love. Everything was flying. I could be there sometimes like, you can't stay home. You just stay home a couple more hours, a couple more days. You going away on Sunday to South Africa. But that's just what he loved to do. I couldn't take that away from him. I couldn't tell him when to go. He couldn't tell me when to go to work. I love banking. He can't say, don't go to the bank today. But that's what he loved to do.
He had made arrangements for you and your husband Roscoe to be gone days later to South Africa for Roscoe's birthday.
Yeah, and we had a 2-week trip planned, and just that Tuesday before he left to go to Florida to make the Florida trip, he was on a computer making contact with whomever in South Africa, because he had the driver prepared to take us wherever, because he would have been in a week training, because they have it twice a year in Johannesburg, and he was coming back after 1 week, and we were gonna go on to several different spots, but he had it all worked out.
Go ahead.
He did the same, like when we went, you go to Dubai, he have trips where he is flying to Riyadh or what have you, and while we're there, we're taken care of by his friends who have became our friends, you know?
And I'd say even in some cases, extended family.
I'm telling you.
I have, one of the things we talked about was, I was just amazed at the response of people We laugh, but I've known these fellas when they were little boys.
That's
They'd
right.
be calling the newsroom in the nighttime, Bobby, order pizza to bring home. So I have known you and seen them grow up. And, you know, I've got to say, you did a tremendous job. You've raised 4 fine young men, and that's not easy,
No.
you know,
And
in
especially
today's
in the
world.
area where we live.
Yeah.
You know what, we can send it around.
Yeah.
But, you know, you try to steer them in the right way. That's all.
I would have noted your response to one of the tabloids insinuation that he was flying without a flight plan and may have been doing something nefarious. Your response was ferocious. Why did you feel you had to defend him that way?
Because I know my boy. I know him. Byron know how his parents are. And I don't think beaten was out of it. You know, don't let me down. We do the best for y'all. Y'all do the best in life. Don't do nothing stupid. That was us.
And you see the kinds of outpouring. I mean, people who I know, who I didn't know, knew him. When you see that kind of outpouring.
I know he was a great person. I shouldn't say was. I know he is a great person. I know he's a great person. All the negative comments, I just feel as if to me, it's just so insensitive. Like, what, you only die for persons who have a flight plan? That's what you're telling me? Like, anything to just tarnish his name, tarnish his reputation. I took to Facebook as well, just like my mother-in-law. My husband has the islands of the Bahamas tattooed all over his hands. This is how much he loved his country. And for you to just go out there and try to make it seem as if he was doing something indecent. No, you will not sully his name. You will not tarnish it. This is one name they will praise, Byron Ferguson. They will.
Very strong.
One thing I couldn't change though is that tattoo, the islands. That's not me. You know, I have one other boy who has the tattoo, and he has, because I didn't like it, he meant to do it. He put Agnes straight across. You know? So I don't like that.
Boys will be boys.
Yes. So that's something I couldn't get out of him. Yeah.
Ladies, your strength just in this instance is incredible. I think it's a testament to the family and the family bond. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, I want to bring in the entire family, and we're going to have some closing words.
Okay.
So stay with us. Our final segment is on the other side of this break.
Hi, I'm here to tell you about the fastest way to purchase the vehicle you want right from home. With SBT Japan, we import used cars from Japan straight to you. Car ownership doesn't have to be hard. Go to sbtjapan.com and sign up for free. Search for the car you want, place your order, and make a payment using any one of our convenient payment options. Once you pay the duty and tax to our in-house broker, we will clear the vehicle and even deliver it straight to your home. Sounds too easy? Well, shouldn't it be?
The latest online reports suggest ongoing recovery efforts by the Defense Force and Police Force and volunteer divers, as well as the Bahamas Air Sea Rescue Association and a glass bottom boat, continue. These efforts are yielding debris from the aircraft piloted by Captain Byron Ferguson. 5 agencies, including the Bahamas Air Accident Investigation Department and the United States Coast Guard, along with boats, aircraft, drone, divers, and shoreline patrols, have been involved in the search and rescue, as well as recovery efforts for the pilot and aircraft. As we get ready to close out this show, I have invited the entire, or most of, the Ferguson family to join me here on the set tonight. Daughters-in-law, sister of Byron's wife, gentleman who you saw earlier, his brothers. I have to ask, these efforts that are ongoing now, is this all too little too late?
I think everything helps, but you know, it should have been done a little earlier. We're grateful still for the continuing efforts.
Too little too late for you?
When you look at the facts, I think the reality is it's too little too late.
One of the things that you have done in the aftermath too is set up a GoFundMe account. I want to talk about why that is set up, and if people want to help, what can they do? Because you know, in an instance like this, we seem helpless. We stand as a public, as friends, even as family, and you feel helpless. A lot of people say to me, you know, Jerome, I know you've spoken to Agnes, how's she doing? What do you say? Even people have called me and said, you know, I want to call, but what do I say? I say, just call. You know, but people, this is a way, I think people can do something if they could. I want to talk about the GoFundMe account.
The reason for the GoFundMe is, as you already was made aware, the plane went over. The reason for the GoFundMe is to try our best to locate the plane. Mm-hmm. You know, you have a lot of persons who, on the GoFundMe page, when they donate, they say what they want the money to go for. And most of it is to go towards the search for the plane. Persons want to know where the plane is, they want to find the plane, and we want to know where the plane is. So it's for the missing planes.
How do we find the GoFundMe account?
It's a link that we had shared. It's on Head Knowles page.
Okay.
And I think that's...
So we can go to the Head Knowles page
and you can find it.
The specifics of it, like I said, the depth of the ocean out there is presumably beyond the capacity of human divers now. So we're looking into procuring these unmanned underwater devices or something that can go down there and probably give us some idea of where the plane is, if it's salvageable, any remains to give us closure.
This is the question I've been sort of trying to ask all evening in this interview. If Byron's body is discovered, will that begin to bring you some closure?
It will. Definitely it will. It will.
You talked about you're hoping that he's still alive. Will that, when I ask you as a family, has that hope dwindled for many of you?
Yes.
Yeah,
At this point in time, boss, you just realize the reality, especially being out there, seeing the terrain, seeing the circumstances that he was up against.
Time is the enemy. If he wasn't killed in the crash and he survived 2 weeks out, not being discovered, any resources to survive on, still looking at the inevitable outcome.
Without being a wrap up, I want to say that this took a tremendous amount of courage on your part to come here and to share the story. I welcomed the opportunity because I think for one, it shows the strength of a Bahamian family. I think sometimes which is something we miss and we are missing. It shows the dedication that you have to your loved one, and I appreciate that. But I think bigger than that, because of the circumstances, it has captured the nation's attention and brought to light some things that need and must be fixed. And I said it before that out of every tragedy, we always hope that something great, something better happens. And I hope that this tragedy will cause us to stop and focus and look at ensuring that nothing like this ever happens. I mean, as long as we have aircraft in the air, there is the inevitability, but it is the aftermath that really speaks to what should happen. And so, thank you. Our prayers and thoughts continue to be with you. We pray for your strength. We pray for God's covering over you. I want to also acknowledge Bryson, who is in the back sleeping. He's Byron's 9-month-old. He was quite active a little earlier, but thank you so much for opening up and sharing with us and giving us some insight into what you're going through. It certainly is something that, you know, this isn't the first time like something like this has happened, but certainly this has cast a spotlight onto so many things that need to be fixed in our country. So to Agnes, thank you for coming and agreeing to be here. Boys, thank you. Ladies, thank you for being such a tremendous support. And we will continue to pray for you and have you in our thoughts.
Thank you.
You've got a wonderful little boy to raise, and you've got a great support system here, I'm sure, that will be with you. Okay, so thank you so much all for being here. We hope that tonight's show has certainly created a consciousness in our society for some things that we really need to address in a very serious way. Special thanks to Ashton, Bijan, Ann Vaughn, Ferguson, as well as Agnes and Anya Ferguson, to the entire family. Thank you so much. To my producer, technical staff, and certainly our audience, thank you so much for joining us. Once again, I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. We'll see you next time on The Record.